Pastor Jason, is it necessary to tithe?
Wow, that's a great question. Tithing is a word that we find in the Old Testament, and the interpretation or the translation means a tenth. You see, we see many examples of that in the Old Testament. We see Cain and Abel giving a first fruit. God required them to give an offering, a tenth. Abraham, we see giving a tenth of his money or his first fruits. We read that in the nation of Israel, and they were required by God to give a tenth, and sometimes was even more. But how about today? How about in the New Testament or in the 21st century? Is it required for us to give a tithe? Well, the Bible doesn't command us in the New Testament to give a tithe. However, we read in Scripture that we are to give regularly. Paul says that in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, or to give proportionately in Acts chapter 11, to give sacrificially in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, and we're to give humbly in Matthew chapter 6. So even though we're not required to give a tithe, we are to give to the Lord. And me personally, I use that tithe, that tenth, as my baseline, just because it's a good reference for me in the area of giving. The Bible wants us to give generously, wants us to give humbly and sacrificially. And so, yes, the answer to that question is we are to give to the Lord. But I like to ask a question when people ask that particular question to me. Why wouldn't we give our first fruits? Why wouldn't we give our tithe and our offering to the Lord for all that He has done for us by giving us Jesus to give us salvation and a home in heaven? So yes, it is important and honorable to give to our God.